The diplomatic vessel cut through the darkness of space, its hull reflecting the distant stars like tiny diamonds scattered across black velvet. Inside the ship, Ambassador Daehyun stood before a wide window, watching Station Concordia grow larger with each passing moment. The massive structure hung in the void like a steel flower, its countless petals made of metal and glass housing representatives from 47 different worlds. Daehyun was 45 years old, with gray threading through his dark hair and lines etched around his eyes from years of careful negotiation. He had served Earth for 2 decades, always believing that words could solve problems better than weapons. Today, he carried hopes for a peaceful agreement about mining rights in the Outer Rim, territory that humanity desperately needed to fuel its growing colonies. Behind him, Captain Ji-woo checked her weapon for the 3rd time. She was younger than the ambassador, barely 30, but her eyes held the hardness of someone who had seen combat. As security chief, she had argued against this mission from the start. "I don't like this," she said quietly. "The council has been hostile since we arrived. Every meeting feels like a trap." Daehyun turned from the window and offered a tired smile. "Fear makes people hostile, Captain. The older species see how fast we're growing and it frightens them. They remember when they were young and hungry like us." "Fear can kill just as easily as hatred," Ji-woo replied. Young Hyun-soo, the junior attaché, entered the bridge carrying a data pad. He was fresh from the academy, still excited about serving among the stars. "Sir, the council has confirmed your meeting. Chancellor Vrex will see you in 3 hours." Daehyun nodded. "Good. Make sure all our documentation is ready. I want everything transparent and clear." The ship docked without incident. Station Concordia was enormous inside, with corridors wide enough to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes. Daehyun's small party walked through crowds of aliens, some towering over them like walking buildings, others small enough to fit in a human hand. The air tasted strange, filtered and recycled to suit 100 different biologies at once. They were escorted to the council chambers by guards from the Krell Empire. These warriors stood 8 feet tall, with armor that seemed grown rather than built, all sharp angles and gleaming surfaces. Their weapons hummed with barely contained energy. Daehyun tried to make polite conversation, but the guards remained silent and cold. The council chamber was a vast circular room with seats arranged in tiers, rising up like an amphitheater. Chancellor Vrex sat at the highest point, his crystalline body catching light and throwing it back in rainbow patterns. Dozens of other council members filled the other seats, representing species Daehyun had studied but never truly understood. Ambassador Daehyun of Earth, Vrex's voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into human speech by computers too advanced for Earth to replicate. "You come seeking privileges in the Outer Rim. Why should the Council grant humanity access to these territories?" Daehyun stepped forward, his voice steady. "Because we follow the laws. We respect the treaties. We offer fair trade and cooperation with all species. The Outer Rim has resources enough for everyone." "Resources you would exploit," said Executor Thrain, the military commander who sat beside Vrex. He was Krell, larger than the guards, with scars visible even through his ceremonial armor. "Your species breeds too fast. You expand too quickly. You take what others have built over millennia and claim it as progress." "We only claim what is unclaimed," Daehyun replied carefully. "The territories we request are uninhabited. No species has settled there in 10,000 years. There are reasons for that," another council member hissed, a serpentine creature whose name Daehyun could never pronounce correctly. "Those regions are unstable. Dangerous. Your primitive ships would be destroyed." The debate continued for hours. Daehyun presented his case with patience and precision, but he could feel the hostility in the room like a physical weight. These beings had decided against humanity before he ever arrived. This meeting was theater, nothing more. During a recess, Hyun-soo approached him urgently. "Sir, I found something in the public records. You need to see this." The data pad showed financial transactions, hidden but not hidden well enough. Weapons shipments moving through supposedly neutral zones. Bribes paid to council security forces. And, at the center of it all, signatures from 3 council members, including Executor Thrain. Dae-hyun felt his stomach tighten. This is weapons trafficking. Illegal under council law. And it's been happening for years, Hyun-soo whispered. They're selling advanced weapons to species not yet cleared for them. Some of those weapons have been used in conflicts where thousands died. Ji-woo joined them, her hand on her weapon. "Sir, if you reveal this, they'll consider it an attack." "If I don't reveal this, I'm complicit in their crimes," Dae-hyun said. He had built his career on honesty and transparency. He could not abandon those principles now, even if it meant danger. When the session resumed, Dae-hyun did not return to his previous arguments. Instead, he presented the evidence of corruption. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some council members shouted denials. Others called for immediate investigation. Executor Thrain stood, his massive form radiating rage. "You dare accuse this council of criminality," he roared. "You, whose species has existed in space for barely a generation. I accuse individuals of breaking laws they swore to uphold," Dae-hyun said firmly. "The evidence speaks clearly." Chancellor Vrex raised one crystalline hand and, the chamber fell silent. "Ambassador Dae-hyun, you are hereby charged with espionage and sedition against the Galactic Council. Guards, arrest him." Ji-woo drew her weapon instantly. "Stay back." But, they were only 4 humans against a station of thousands. Krell guards poured into the chamber. Hyun-soo tried to run, clutching his data pad. Ji-woo fired twice, dropping 2 guards before a stun blast knocked her unconscious. Dae-hyun raised his hands in surrender. "Please," he said. "We can discuss this peacefully." They dragged him to the station's central plaza, a vast open area where thousands of beings gathered daily. Executor Thrain pronounced sentence immediately, without trial, without appeal. The charge was espionage. The penalty was death. Dae-hyun looked up at the crowd of alien faces watching him. He thought of Earth, so far away. He thought of his family. He thought of all the humans who had believed that joining the council meant joining civilization. "Let it be known," he said, his voice carrying across the plaza, "that I die for speaking truth. Remember that, when you wonder why humans will never trust you again." The execution was swift. Cameras recorded everything. And, in the chaos afterward, young Hyun-soo slipped away into the shadows, carrying the data pad with all its terrible evidence, broadcasting Dae-hyun's final words to every human ship in range. The ambassador's body was left in the plaza for 6 hours as a warning. But, the message Earth received was different than the one the council intended to send. President Boare stood in a war room deep beneath Geneva, watching the holographic replay for the 20th time. Dae-hyun's execution played out in perfect clarity, every detail preserved by a dozen different camera angles. She had not slept in 36 hours. Her advisors surrounded her, waiting for orders that would shape humanity's future. "How many saw it?" she asked quietly. Foreign Minister Jae-hoon checked his tablet. "Every human settlement, every ship, every colony." Hyun-soo's broadcast reached everyone. "The footage is spreading across the galaxy now. Other species are seeing it too." Admiral Taeyong slammed his fist on the table. "We need to mobilize the fleet. Every ship, every weapon. We hit them hard and, we hit them now." "That would be suicide," Jae-hoon said. "The Council has ships we can't even detect, weapons that can crack planets. We'd be destroyed in days." General Soo-jin leaned forward, her scarred face set in hard lines. Then, we die fighting instead of kneeling. They murdered our ambassador. They killed him on camera for the crime of telling the truth. If we do nothing, we tell every human in the galaxy that their lives mean nothing. Boare held up one hand and, the arguing stopped. She was 53 years old, elected on a platform of peaceful expansion and cooperation with alien species. She had believed in the Council's promise of mutual respect and equality. Now she stared at her shattered faith, displayed in brutal clarity on the screens before her. "What are our options?" she asked. Jae-hoon pulled up a list. "We can file a formal protest through diplomatic channels. We can request arbitration from neutral species. We can impose economic sanctions. We can recall our ambassadors and cut ties. We can." "None of that brings Dae-hyun back," Soo-jin interrupted. "None of that punishes the ones responsible." "Punishment isn't the goal," Jae-hoon shot back. "Survival is. We're outnumbered and outgunned. We need to be smart." Admiral Taeyong stood and activated a star map. "Our intelligence shows the Council is divided. 16 species abstained from the vote to arrest Dae-hyun. Another 8 voted against it. If we act carefully, we might turn this into political pressure." "Political pressure doesn't avenge murder," Soo-jin said coldly. Boare studied the map, her mind racing through possibilities and consequences. "What's the Council's official position?" "They claim Dae-hyun was a spy," Jae-hoon said bitterly. "They say his execution was lawful under Council regulations. They're demanding we apologize for the false accusations against Executor Thrain." "Apologize?" Taeyong's voice was dangerous. "They want us to apologize." "There's more," Jae-hoon continued. "The regulation they cited was passed 3 days before the execution. They created the law specifically to justify killing him." The room fell silent. Even Jae-hoon, the voice of peaceful diplomacy, looked shaken. Creating laws after the fact to justify murder was not justice. It was tyranny. Boare made her decision. "Recall every human diplomat from Council space. Immediately. Close all trade routes. No ships, no goods, no communication. We're done pretending they're civilized." "That's a start," Soo-jin said. "But, it's not enough." "I know," Boare replied. "Taeyong, how long would it take to mobilize the fleet?" 72 hours for full deployment, the Admiral said. "But, President, if we're going to fight, we need a strategy better than charging in and dying gloriously." Boare nodded. "We won't charge in. But, I want them to see our ships. I want them to know we're ready." Over the next week, messages flew between Earth and the Council. The Council sent an ultimatum: accept the execution as justified, pay 5 billion credits in reparations for false accusations against their officials, and submit to new oversight of all human expansion. In return, they would allow humanity to remain in the Council with reduced voting rights. Boare read the message 3 times, each time feeling her anger grow colder and sharper. They wanted humanity to pay for the privilege of being murdered. They wanted submission and humiliation. She drafted her response personally. It was 2 sentences long. "We reject all terms. Surrender those responsible for Ambassador Dae-hyun's murder or accept the consequences." The Council's reply came within hours. They declared humanity a rogue species, and authorized member states to take military action if humans did not comply within 30 days. Krell warships began moving toward the borders of human space. That night, Intelligence Officer Kim brought Boare information that changed everything. Kim was 40 years old, thin and nervous, but brilliant at finding patterns others missed. "We've been analyzing communications between Council members," Kim explained. "There's something strange about the timing. Executor Thrain knew about Daehyun's discovery before the ambassador presented it publicly. A leak? Boare asked. No, Kim said. Thrain knew because he wanted Daehyun to find the evidence. It was a trap from the beginning. More information came in over the following days. Thrain had deliberately left the corruption data accessible. He had pushed other council members to vote for the arrest. He had insisted on immediate execution without trial. And, behind it all stood King Malvar of the Krell Empire. Malvar had been seeking an excuse to attack humanity for years. Humans were expanding into territories the Krell considered theirs by ancient right. Human weapons, though primitive, were innovative in ways that worried Krell military planners. Humanity's rapid growth threatened the Krell position as the Council's primary military power. So Malvar had manufactured a crisis. He had sacrificed his own officials' reputations, knowing the corruption charges would eventually be proven false or forgotten. What mattered was the provocation. He wanted humans angry. He wanted them to lash out. Then, he could destroy them with the Council's blessing and claim it was self-defense. Boare called her advisors back to the war room. This time, there were new faces. Commander Yun-hee of the Shadow Corps stood at attention, her posture perfect despite having been pulled from a training exercise. Dr. Wu Jin, the xenobiology expert, looked uncomfortable in his civilian clothes surrounded by so many uniforms. Malvar orchestrated this entire event, Boare said without preamble. He murdered Daehyun to start a war. He wants us to attack the Council so he can crush us. Then, we don't attack the Council, Su-jin said slowly. We attack him. Jae-hoon looked horrified. You're talking about assassination. About striking the ruler of a sovereign nation. That would make us exactly what they claim we are. They already claim we're criminals, Taeyong said. The question is whether we die as criminals who did nothing, or criminals who made them pay a price. Boare looked at Yun-hee. Commander, I'm going to ask you a question. If I gave the order, could your team eliminate King Malvar? Yun-hee didn't hesitate. Yes, Madam President. It would be extremely difficult and, the chances of extraction are low. But, yes, we could do it. And, the diplomatic consequences? Boare asked Jae-hoon. The foreign minister looked ill. Catastrophic. We'd be labeled terrorists. Any species considering alliance with us would refuse. We'd be isolated completely. We're already isolated, Su-jin said. They've made sure of that. Boare stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. Somewhere out there, Daehyun's family was grieving. Across Earth and all its colonies, humans were demanding justice. The Council had taught her a hard lesson: civilization was just a word powerful species used to control weaker ones. Ghost Protocol, she said finally. I'm authorizing Ghost Protocol. Commander Yun-hee, assemble your team. You have 72 hours to prepare. Your mission is to infiltrate the Krell homeworld and eliminate King Malvar. Make it clear this is revenge for Ambassador Daehyun. Yun-hee saluted. Understood, Madam President. This is a mistake, Jae-hoon said quietly. Perhaps, Boare replied. But, doing nothing is a worse one. They need to learn that humans remember. And, that we always repay our debts. The Shadow Core facility was hidden beneath 3 miles of lunar rock, far from Earth and, far from watching eyes. Commander Yun-hee walked through corridors that didn't officially exist, toward a briefing room where 12 of humanity's most dangerous soldiers waited. She had hand-picked each one. All were volunteers. All understood they might never come home. Yun-hee was 34 years old and had spent half her life training for missions like this. She had fought in the Mars Rebellion, survived the Titan disaster, and led operations on 6 different worlds. She was small compared to most soldiers, barely 5.5 feet tall, but her record spoke louder than her size. 43 missions. 43 successes. 0 failures. The team stood when she entered. Lieutenant Sung Ho, her second-in-command, nodded respectfully. He was 40, older than most special operations soldiers, but his specialty in infiltration made him invaluable. Engineer Min Ah sat at a computer terminal, already working despite the briefing not yet starting. She was 26 and could hack systems most people didn't know existed. The others were specialists in demolition, close combat, linguistics, and emergency medicine. At ease, Yun-hee said. You all know why you're here. Ghost Protocol has been authorized for the first time in human history. Our mission is simple. Infiltrate Krell Prime and kill King Malvar. She activated a holographic display showing the Krell homeworld. It was a massive planet, twice Earth's size, with continents covered in fortress cities. Orbital defense platforms surrounded it like a crown of thorns. The capital city alone housed 50 million Krell warriors. This is suicide, said one soldier, a demolitions expert named Tae-min. Yes, Yun-hee agreed. Probably. But Ambassador Daehyun is dead because Malvar wanted to start a war. If we do nothing, thousands more humans will die when that war begins. This is our chance to cut off the head before the snake strikes. Dr. Wu Jin entered, carrying several data pads. He was 60 years old, stooped and nervous, uncomfortable around soldiers. But his knowledge of Krell biology was unmatched. I've prepared profiles on Krell physiology, he said, distributing the pads. They have 3 hearts, redundant organs, and skeletal structures that can withstand impacts that would kill a human. Their armor isn't just worn, it's partially bonded to their bodies. You can't just shoot them and expect them to fall. Weak points? Sung Ho asked. Wu Jin highlighted several areas on the hologram. The joints between armor plates. The throat, if you can reach it. And, here, he pointed to a spot at the base of the skull, severing the primary nerve cluster causes immediate paralysis. Min-ah pulled up intelligence reports. I've been studying Krell security systems. They use genetic markers for identification. We can't disguise ourselves as Krell, but we can forge credentials from neutral species. Traders visit Krell Prime regularly. What kind of traders? Yun-hee asked. Luxury goods mostly. Art, rare minerals, exotic foods. The Krell elite have expensive tastes. They spent 3 days planning. Every detail was examined and re-examined. They acquired a merchant vessel from a raid on pirates, one that had Krell authorization codes already in its computers. They created false identities as traders from the Tolvan system, a neutral species known for staying out of galactic politics. Min-ah worked 18-hour days modifying their equipment. Weapons were disguised as scanner equipment. Explosives were hidden inside containers of supposed luxury goods. She created a virus that would feed false data into Krell security networks, making their sensors see empty corridors when the team moved through them. How long will the virus last? Yun-hee asked. 4 hours, maybe 5, Min-ah said. After that, their security AI will detect the intrusion and lock down everything. Then, we have 4 hours to get in, kill Malvar, and get out. Sung Ho discovered critical information about Malvar's schedule. There's a religious ceremony in 3 weeks. The Festival of First Blood, celebrating the Krell's first victory in space. Malvar always attends. He appears at the Grand Temple in the capital city. Security? Yun-hee asked. Massive. But, the temple is old, built before modern security systems. It has tunnels underneath from when it was used as a fortress. Those tunnels connect to the city's ancient sewer system. It was a chance. A small one, but it was better than trying to assault the royal palace. The journey to Krell Prime took 2 weeks. They traveled as merchants, stopping at 3 neutral stations to establish their cover story. Mina traded actual goods, building a reputation. Sung-ho chatted with other traders, gathering information about palace security and city layouts. Krell Prime grew larger in their view screen. It was a beautiful world, with purple oceans and red vegetation covering most continents. Cities glittered like jewels, metal and stone shaped by alien aesthetics. Orbital platforms challenged their approach, but Mina transmitted the correct codes and they were allowed to descend. The capital city sprawled across a vast plain. Buildings rose in sharp angles and brutal geometry, all made from dark stone that seemed to absorb light. Krell warriors walked the streets in organized formations, their armor gleaming. The sky was filled with patrol craft. They docked at a commercial port and began unloading cargo. Krell inspectors examined their goods with suspicious eyes, but the paperwork was perfect. Mina had made sure of that. They were cleared and given temporary residence permits. The team split up to avoid suspicion. Yunhee and Mina posed as the main traders, renting a warehouse. Sung-ho and 3 others disappeared into the city, scouting routes and exits. The remaining soldiers stayed with the ship, ready for a quick departure. Days passed. They established routines, appeared normal. Sung-ho found the tunnel entrances, hidden behind a collapsed building in the old quarter. Mina infiltrated the city's data network, mapping security patrol routes and camera positions. The festival of First Blood approached. The city filled with Krell from across the empire, all coming to celebrate their martial heritage. Yunhee watched from her warehouse window as thousands of armored warriors marched in parade formations. Each one was a killing machine, bred for war across countless generations. "We're really doing this," Mina said quietly. "We don't have a choice," Yunhee replied. "Malver started this. We're going to finish it." The night before the festival, the team assembled in the warehouse. Yunhee looked at each face, memorizing them. Some of these people had served with her for years. Others she had only known for weeks. All of them were about to risk everything. "Last chance to back out," she said. "No shame in it. This is as close to impossible as missions get." No one moved. No one spoke. They had all made their choice. Right then, Yunhee said. "Mina, start the virus. Sung-ho, lead the advance team to the tunnels. Everyone else, you know your assignments. We move in 2 hours." They prepared in silence, checking weapons and equipment one final time. Yunhee loaded her rifle with ammunition designed to pierce Krell armor. It was human-made, innovative and deadly, exactly what the Krell feared about humanity's weapons. Mina typed commands into her computer. "Virus is active. Security systems are compromised." Sung-ho led 6 soldiers into the night. They moved through dark streets, avoiding patrols with practiced ease. The tunnel entrance was exactly where intelligence said it would be. They descended into darkness, using night vision to navigate passages carved 1,000 years ago. Yunhee followed with the second team. Above them, the city celebrated. Drums pounded. Crowds roared. No one noticed the small group of humans creeping through ancient stone corridors beneath their feet. They reached a junction where the tunnel branched. Sung-ho checked his map. Temple is straight ahead. Should be about 200 meters. They moved forward. And then, alarms screamed through the tunnels. Red lights flashed. Heavy footsteps echoed from ahead. "They found us," Mina said, checking her tablet. "The virus failed early. Security is converging on our position." Yunhee made a decision in seconds. "Sung-ho, take half the team and hold them off. Buy us time. Commander, that's an order, Lieutenant. We came here to kill a king. I intend to finish the mission. Sung Ho saluted. Then, he smiled. Make it count. He took 6 soldiers and disappeared back down the tunnel. Seconds later, gunfire erupted. Screams and explosions echoed through ancient stone. Yun He led her remaining team forward, toward the temple and the king who waited above. Gunfire rattled through the tunnels behind them as Yun He led her team toward the temple foundation. 5 soldiers remained with her now, including Min-Ah and Taemin the demolitions expert. The sounds of Sung Ho's desperate last stand grew fainter with each step, replaced by the thunderous drums of the festival above. How much time? Yun He asked without slowing. Min-Ah checked her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Security knows we're here. They're sealing tunnel sections. We have maybe 10 minutes before this entire underground is locked down. Then, we move faster. They reached a stone staircase that spiraled upward into darkness. Yun He took point, her rifle raised, every sense alert. Above them, thousands of Krell warriors celebrated their empire's bloody history. She was about to give them a new story to remember. The stairs ended at a heavy wooden door bound with iron. Taemin examined it quickly. Not locked, just barred from the other side. I can blow it. Do it quiet, Yun He ordered. Taemin placed shaped charges at the hinges, tiny things that looked like toys but carried focused explosive power. The blast was sharp and quick, muffled by stone walls. The door sagged inward and they slipped through into a storage chamber filled with ceremonial items. Min-Ah pointed to a wall. According to the temple plans, that's the south wall of the main chamber. Malvar will be on the central platform. They could hear chanting now, thousands of Krell voices raised in unison. The sound vibrated through the floor, primal and fierce. Yun He signaled her team forward. They crossed the storage chamber and pressed against the wall, listening. The Crimson Guard will be surrounding him, whispered one soldier, a woman named Hygiene who specialized in close combat. 20 at minimum, maybe more. We don't fight them all, Yun He said. We create chaos, take the shot, and extract. Speed and surprise are all we have. Taemin placed more charges on the wall. On your signal, Commander. Yun He looked at her team. Min-Ah looked terrified but determined. Taemin was calm, as always before action. Hygiene and the 2 remaining soldiers checked their weapons one final time. These were good people, brave people, and she was about to lead them into almost certain death. For Dae-hyun, she said quietly. For Dae-hyun, they echoed. Blow it. The charges detonated and the wall exploded inward. Stone fragments showered across the temple floor. Yun He burst through the smoke into chaos. The temple was enormous, a vast hall supported by columns carved to look like ancient Krell warriors. Thousands of Krell filled the space, all turned toward the central platform where King Malvar stood. He was massive even for his species, standing 10 feet tall in armor that seemed to be made of solid gold. His crown was a brutal thing of spikes and blades. For one frozen moment, everyone stared at the humans who had appeared from nowhere. Then, the Crimson Guard moved. They were Malvar's elite, genetically enhanced super soldiers bred for one purpose, protecting their king. They moved with impossible speed, drawing weapons that hummed with deadly energy. 20 of them formed a wall between Yun He's team and Malvar. Scatter! Yun He shouted. Her team split in different directions. Taemin threw grenades that exploded in flashes of light and sound, temporarily blinding the closest guards. Hygiene engaged 2 guards in close combat, her enhanced reflexes barely matching their superior strength. Min-Ah ran for cover, typing furiously on her tablet. Yun He sprinted toward the platform, firing as she ran. Her bullets found gaps in Crimson Guard armor, dropping two before the others adapted. A massive fist swung at her head and she ducked, rolling between the guard's legs and coming up firing. The guard fell with a hole through his throat. More guards converged. Yun-hee heard screaming behind her. One of her soldiers went down, then another. She couldn't look back. Couldn't slow down. She had to reach Malvar. The king watched her approach with something like amusement in his alien eyes. He made no move to flee, no gesture of fear. Instead, he drew his own weapon, a sword longer than Yun-hee was tall. A human insect, Malvar's voice boomed through the temple. You dare interrupt this sacred ceremony? You murdered our ambassador, Yun-hee shouted back, still running. You wanted war. Here it is. She fired at him. The bullet sparked off his armor, leaving small dents but causing no real damage. Malvar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Your primitive weapons cannot harm me, child. You should have stayed in your corner of space. Yun-hee reached the platform and leaped. A Crimson Guard tried to intercept but Taemin's last grenade caught him, blowing the warrior sideways. She landed in front of Malvar and looked up at the king who had orchestrated Daehyun's death. Minna, now, she screamed. Back across the temple, Minna pressed the final command on her tablet. The virus she had planted in the palace systems activated fully, overloading the building's shield generators. For exactly 3 seconds, the temple's defensive fields dropped. Outside in orbit, Admiral Taeyong's fleet had been waiting. 3 seconds was all they needed. Precision strikes from human railguns punched through the temple's roof, missing the gathered crowd but hitting the platform's support structure. Stone and metal exploded. The platform tilted violently. Malvar stumbled. Yun-hee didn't hesitate. She dropped her rifle and pulled the knife from her belt. It was forged on Earth from steel mixed with rare elements, sharp enough to cut through almost anything. It had cost more than a small ship to create. She jumped at the off-balance king, driving the blade toward the joint in his neck armor. Malvar caught her wrist with one massive hand. His grip was crushing, bones grinding together. Yun-hee screamed but didn't let go of the knife. You think you can kill me? Malvar growled. I don't think, Yun-hee gasped through the pain. I know. She twisted her body, using Malvar's own grip as leverage. The movement cost her, wrenching her shoulder from its socket. But it worked. The angle changed. The knife found the gap she needed. Malvar's eyes widened as the blade slid into his throat, severing major vessels and cutting the nerve cluster Dr. Wu Jin had marked as critical. Black blood sprayed across Yun-hee's face. The king's grip loosened. He staggered backward. This is for Daehyun, Yun-hee said. She wrenched the knife sideways with her remaining good hand. King Malvar, ruler of the Krell Empire, conqueror of 18 worlds, fell backward off the platform. He hit the temple floor with a crash that echoed through the sudden silence. 3 hearts pumped black blood onto sacred stones. And, then, stopped. The Crimson Guard stood frozen in shock. In their 1,000-year history, no king had ever been killed. It was impossible. Unthinkable. Yet there lay Malvar, dead by human hands. Alarms screamed through the city. Yun-hee staggered, her shoulder useless, her body battered. Minna reached her first, half carrying her toward the hole they'd blown in the wall. Extraction is impossible, Minna said. Too many guards between us and the tunnels. Then, we go up, Yun-hee replied through gritted teeth. They climbed toward the temple roof using rubble as handholds. Behind them, the Crimson Guard finally overcame their shock and gave chase. Bullets and energy blasts filled the air. Taemin fell, hit multiple times. Hygiene turned to cover their retreat and disappeared under a wave of armored warriors. Yunhee and Mina reached the roof just as human dropships screamed down through the anti-air fire. Admiral Taeyang had brought the fleet into orbit, consequences be damned. Missiles rained on military installations. Railgun rounds destroyed orbital platforms. A dropship hovered above the temple, its cargo door open. Hands reached down. Yunhee felt herself pulled aboard, Mina beside her. She caught a glimpse of one more soldier making the ship, a young man named Jun Seo who had joined the team only weeks ago. 3 survivors from 12. The dropship banked hard, evading fire. Through the open door, Yunhee could see the city burning below. The temple was collapsing, Krell forces in chaos, and, in the center of the main hall, King Malvar's body lay in a spreading pool of black blood. "We did it," Mina whispered, her voice shaking. "We actually did it." Yunhee closed her eyes. They had done it. But, the price was written in the faces of 9 soldiers who would never go home. Sung-ho, Hyjin, Taemin, and 6 others. She would remember every name. Every sacrifice. The fleet retreated from Krell space, damaged but intact. Behind them, the Krell Empire descended into chaos as rival factions fought for the throne. And, across the galaxy, both human and alien beings learned a new lesson. Humanity remembered its dead. And, humanity always collected its debts. 3 months after King Malvar's assassination, the Galactic Council gathered in emergency session. The chamber that had once sentenced Daehyun to death was now half empty. 16 species had withdrawn their representatives, refusing to participate in what they called a corrupt institution. 8 more attended but refused to vote on any measures. Chancellor Vrek stood at his podium, his crystalline body no longer gleaming. The rainbow patterns that had once danced across his surface were dull, lifeless. The Council's authority had shattered along with humanity's trust. This emergency tribunal will now address the charges against former Executor Thrain and other Council officials, Vrex announced, his translated voice hollow. Ambassador Haewon sat in the human delegation section, exactly where Daehyun had sat months before. She was 52 years old, a former military officer who had fought in the Mars Rebellion. President Boare had chosen her specifically because she understood both war and peace, and knew the difference between them. Beside her sat Admiral Taeyang, no longer commanding the fleet but serving as military advisor. His presence was a message. Humanity came armed now, even to diplomatic meetings. Counselor Zeth, a being of flowing silver energy from a species that valued truth above all else, approached the central platform. He had been one of the 8 who voted against Daehyun's arrest. Now he served as chief prosecutor. "The evidence is clear," Zeth said, his voice like wind chimes. Executor Thrain deliberately created the circumstances leading to Ambassador Daehyun's execution. He planted evidence knowing it would be discovered. He pushed for immediate arrest and execution without trial. All of this was done at the direction of King Malvar to manufacture justification for war against humanity. Thrain sat in a containment field, stripped of his armor. Without it, he looked smaller, weaker. But, his eyes still burned with hatred. "I followed orders," Thrain said. "The king commanded and I obeyed. This is the Krell way." "The Krell way does not supersede council law," said High Arbiter Quinn, a neutral species leader who had been chosen to oversee the tribunal. "You participated in the murder of a diplomatic representative. You violated the most sacred principle of the council, that ambassadors are protected." "He was a spy," Thrain spat. "A human spy spreading lies about council officials." Haewon stood smoothly. "May I address the tribunal?" Quinn nodded. "The council recognizes Ambassador Haewon of Earth." She walked to the center of the chamber, her boots echoing in the vast space. She carried a data pad, but she didn't look at it. She had memorized every word she intended to say. Ambassador Daehyun was not a spy, she began. He was a good man who believed in peace and cooperation. He discovered evidence of corruption and presented it because he thought the council would want to know the truth. For this, he was murdered in public, his body left on display as a warning. She paused, letting the words sink in. The council claims to represent civilization, justice, order. But what you really represent is the tyranny of the old and powerful over the young and weak. You created laws specifically to justify killing my predecessor. You demanded that humanity apologize and pay reparations for the crime of speaking truth. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Chancellor Vrex remained motionless. So humanity responded in the only language you understand, Haewon continued. We killed your king. We struck at the heart of the empire that orchestrated this crime. And we will do it again to anyone who harms our people. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several species representatives stood in protest. But others remained seated, watching carefully. This is a threat, one council member demanded. This is a promise, Haewon replied calmly. For 15 years, humanity tried to follow your rules. We submitted to your laws, even when they were unjust. We accepted your condescension and your contempt. We believed that patience and good faith would be rewarded. She turned slowly, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. Ambassador Daehyun's murder taught us differently. You don't respect patience. You see it as weakness. You don't reward good faith. You exploit it. So humanity has adopted a new policy, one I suggest all younger species consider, proportional response. Explain this term, Quinn said. Simple, Haewon said. Harm one human, we harm one of you. Kill a human diplomat, we kill your king. Attack a human colony, we destroy your homeworld. We will match your actions exactly, without hesitation, without mercy. This is barbarism, shouted a council member. No, Haewon said quietly. Barbarism is executing an ambassador for telling the truth. What humanity offers is justice. Clear, proportional, inevitable justice. She returned to her seat. The chamber erupted in argument. Some species condemned humanity's actions as terrorism. Others, especially younger species who had suffered under council corruption, spoke in support. The debate raged for hours. Finally, Quinn called for order. The tribunal has reached its decision regarding the charges. Executor Thrain is found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, falsification of evidence, and abuse of council authority. He is sentenced to life imprisonment. Thrain roared in fury, but the containment field held. Additionally, Quinn continued, Chancellor Vrex is found guilty of failing to prevent wrongful execution and abuse of authority. He is removed from his position and barred from council service. Vrex did not protest. His crystalline form simply dimmed further, accepting the judgment. The council must now address the question of humanity's membership and the new policy they have announced. This debate lasted 3 days. Species lined up to speak for and against humanity. Some demanded Earth be expelled from the council and sanctioned. Others argued that the council's corruption had forced humanity's hand. In the end, a compromise emerged. Humanity would remain in the council, but with conditions. They had to agree to submit military actions to council oversight. In return, the council would adopt new protections for diplomatic personnel and create an independent oversight committee to investigate corruption. Haewon stood to respond. Humanity accepts continued membership. But, we will not submit our military to council oversight. Instead, we propose this: no human representative will travel without military escort. Any attack on human diplomats will be considered an act of war. And we reserve the right to respond to threats as we see fit. That's unacceptable, several council members protested. Then, we withdraw from the council, HFY said simply. And we invite any other species tired of corruption and tyranny to join us in a new alliance. The threat was clear. If the council rejected humanity's terms, they would lose not just Earth but potentially dozens of other species. The old order was crumbling. After hours of negotiation, a new agreement was reached. The Galactic Charter was rewritten with humanity as one of the primary authors. New protections were established. Independent oversight was mandated. And, most importantly, the principle of proportional response was officially recognized. No species would be punished for defending itself, even against more powerful opponents. The Council's ability to create laws targeting specific species was restricted. And, diplomatic representatives gained protections that made them nearly untouchable. It wasn't perfect. Many species remained hostile to humanity. The Krell Empire, now led by Malvar's daughter, was technically at peace but clearly planning for future conflict. But the balance of power had shifted. 6 months after the new charter was signed, Captain Ji Woo stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned battleship, Daehyun's Justice. She had been promoted after surviving the attack on Station Concordia, and President Boare had personally chosen her to command humanity's first true warship. The ship was enormous, built using new technologies traded from allied species and human innovations. Its weapons could crack moons. Its shields could withstand sustained bombardment. And its name was a reminder to every species in the galaxy. Humanity remembered. Back on Earth, a memorial was unveiled in Geneva. It stood 50 feet tall, carved from black stone quarried on Mars. Ambassador Daehyun's face was rendered in perfect detail, forever frozen in the moment before his execution. Beneath it, words were carved in every known language. They thought one death would silence us. They learned that humanity remembers its own. President Boare attended the ceremony along with thousands of others. Yunhee was there too, her arms still in a brace from injuries that hadn't fully healed. Minna stood beside her. They didn't speak. There were no words adequate for what they had lost and what they had accomplished. Foreign Minister Jae-hoon watched the ceremony from a distance. He had opposed the assassination, argued against it repeatedly. But he had been wrong about one thing. The mission hadn't made humanity terrorists in the eyes of the galaxy. It had made them feared. And fear, combined with fairness, created a kind of respect. That night, messages began arriving from younger species across the galaxy. Some wanted trade agreements. Others sought defensive pacts. All of them had watched humanity stand up to the Council and win. All of them wondered if they could do the same. A new alliance was forming, not based on age or power, but on principles. Justice. Proportional response. Protection of the weak. It would take decades to build. There would be setbacks and conflicts. But the foundation had been laid. In her private quarters, HFY reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The Krell were rebuilding their military. Other species were watching and calculating. The galaxy had not suddenly become peaceful. But it had become more honest. Everyone now understood the cost of attacking humanity. One human life equaled one king. It was a brutal equation, but clarity had its own value. She thought about Daehyun, the man she had replaced. He had believed in peace through understanding. She believed in peace through strength. Perhaps both were necessary. Her communication console beeped. A message from President Boare. New diplomatic mission to the Outer Rim. 3 ambassadors, full military escort. Interested? HFY smiled. This was the new normal. Humanity would engage with the galaxy, seek trade and cooperation, work toward peace. But they would do it armed, alert, and ready to respond to any threat. She typed her response. Accepted. I'll need 3 warships. You'll have 5, came Boare's reply. Outside her window, Earth turned slowly in the darkness of space. Somewhere among those lights, Daehyun's family was living their lives, trying to move forward. They would never forget what happened to him. Neither would humanity. The galaxy had killed one human diplomat, thinking it would teach humanity its place. Instead, it had taught them something far more valuable, that civilizations built on power and fear were fragile things. And that even the youngest species could reshape the galaxy if they had the courage to act. Humanity had paid a terrible price for that lesson. 9 soldiers dead. An ambassador executed. Innocents lost. But they had also gained something precious. Respect. Fear. And the absolute certainty that no one would ever again mistake human patience for human weakness. The age of old empires dominating the young was ending. A new order was rising, built on principles humanity had carried from Earth into the stars: justice, proportional response, and the unbreakable promise that those who harmed humanity would pay the price. Always. Without exception. Forever.